to get your opinion of why do you think curiosity is so important? And then secondarily, again, how do you tie that to a purpose? Because I think that's also something that school doesn't really teach you that well.
Those are really nice questions. I don't have a pat answer for it. I think curiosity is innate to me, and I think is innate to many people who end up in leadership. Probably because you're drawn to places where the answer isn't already there, and so you're drawn into sort of the open space, the negative space, even where solutions need to get created. And I actually do very poorly, and no joking at all, in a situation where it's a structured environment where all the answers are there. I get itchy. I can't sit still. I doodle. I can't focus. I am just naturally, I want to be, turning up this microphone upside down and learning how it works and why does it do what it does. And that's always been who I am. I think that purpose is a harder one to get your arms around. For me, I can now retroactively say that I know kind of what drives me, which is helping people lead more empowered lives. But I certainly didn't graduate college with that knowledge. You know, their character is really just a set of your actions strung together. And so we are all naturally attracted to certain things. And I think particularly if you're thinking about people who are starting their careers, I always encourage people to stop and just notice what brings energy into you and notice what depletes you of energy. And if you can find things that keep bringing energy to you, you'll stay curious and purpose driven. And I think there's often a connection between our interests and our purpose and that actually quite deep emotional feeling that we get that we sometimes intellectualize our way away from, but that is really important.
I think you talk about like complacency in your career can really kill you. And so don't be afraid that if there's a misalignment over time, that you're willing to take that next step and go somewhere else, a la, take that time to go to the Knight Foundation or fellowship, sorry, and kind of retool and rethink.
Yeah, and often these things. There's something called transformational learning theory, which is this idea that we don't really change unless there's a propelling event, right? Actually, as people, we're not. If we're kind of comfortable, we kind of stay in that comfort. But what happens is we actually get more and more uncomfortable, and we don't kind of dial into that frequency on ourselves, and then we wait for something to happen. So
Do you think though that by going to a startup like that you gained and accelerated your career? And obviously it's not for everybody, but do you think that is a really big opportunity for students that sometimes gets overlooked?
I try to break it down into a few different steps with people. One of them is I often will say to people, kind of, where are you in your life right now? Like, what are you optimizing for right now? Are you optimizing for financial stability? Are you optimizing for building wealth? Are you optimizing for career experiences that will allow you to get to a known goal? Are you trying to optimize for things that will allow, are you trying to optimize for exploration and exposure? Like, what are you trying to optimize for at any given time? It's helpful because anytime we put a lens on our decision making, we'll naturally filter out stuff that doesn't fall into the natural orientation of the lens. And there's just so much noise coming at us from job boards and Twitter and Insta and TikTok and everything else that's going on out there that you can get really lost. And I actually think that we know about people that when we have too many choices to make, we get really, really anxious. I mean, that's a very human response. And so and trying to find your next job or your first job or any job is very anxiety provoking to begin with. So you want to do things that allow you to make decisions more clearly without worry as much to reduce the level of anxiety. It won't go away, but you can kind of hold it in some level of check. Are you optimizing for salary? Are you optimizing for stability? Are you optimizing, the one thing that I say, I used to have a sign up in my last company that said, constant change, no surprises. That was kind of the pledge that I tried to make as a leader. And I think you have to think that when you're in control of the system, you can try to control the number of surprises, but whether you're in control or you're not, there will always be constant change. And so you can't go to a big company thinking this is safety, right? the 40 years at a company and a gold watch is gone. Even maybe 10 years at a company, 15 years at a company is happening less and less. And so you need to think about your own skills portfolio that you're building and the needs of the organization and the team that you're working with or that you want to work with. I think ask really common sensey questions. So if it can be a big company that's in big trouble, it can be a small company that's growing fast, it can be a small company that has no chance at all. It's a very chaotic time. And I would just add to that, as AI is coming into the picture, we're at another transitional moment, right? And so a lot of the things that we're used to will get shaken up. And so try to really think about who am I, what can I control, and then what are the most important things for me to optimize for at any given time. And just going back to one other thing that I mentioned briefly is really ask yourself commonsensical questions about a company when you're thinking about taking a job. If whether that's a big company or a small company, what do they do? Do I understand it? Does it make sense to me? Can the person I'm interviewing with explain it to me? Can I does it make sense to my vision of where I think the world is headed right now, or does it not make sense? Nothing will be perfect. You're just trying to go in eyes wide open.
I think of it. A lot of people talk about luck, which I think is actually a big part. But what I also think is it's the serendipity that you're prepared for, right? So like in your case, having those 11 languages, something that you loved, that just naturally came to you, right? And then by kind of having that network, it was able to pick out that skill that was relevant that you probably didn't even know as much about. Like it's not something that you like in the current discussion right now. It's not something you talked about yet. And so I think that's pretty amazing. Is like someone else almost picked out something about you that they knew about you, and then helped you put in that position. So I was wondering maybe if you could talk a bit about there is that kind of luck element, but it almost seems in my mind that I've talked to people that it's there. You don't know where it's going to come, but there's usually someone out there that will give you that chance, and you have to be ready to kind of step in that door.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is about taking the idea of curiosity and purpose and just playing it a little farther forward and just saying, some of this is also about being willing to be openly curious about yourself and ask for help. And say to your friends and to your family and to your teachers, here's what I sort of think I'm good at. Do you think this is what I'm good at? Could we have a conversation? How can I be in a learning space about it? We
And vulnerable.
and vulnerable and vulnerable. And I think, and I'm like, I graduated college in the 90s, early 90s. So vulnerability wasn't like cool like it is today, right? There wasn't a lot there was no Instagram and there was no internet and there was no one talking about vulnerability. It was go watch Top Gun, the first version, and you'll see the culture I was graduating out of. And so, but the truth was that, I mean, my vulnerability came from effectively having been humiliated from having gotten booted out of this pretty awesome job. And I just was amazed at how people responded and how people wanted to help. And they appreciated authenticity even then, even though now it's a cool word and no one talked about authenticity then either, including myself. So I think one thing I think that's often important when people are beginning their career journeys or at any point in career journeys and is to think at any given time, what are the three things that I think I might be able to bring to a job? Not necessarily hard skills, they might be soft skills, but and how can I then transmit that through my resume, through interviews or whatever, and how might I learn and evolve what those three things are over time? I had no sense of that graduating college, none. But I would have loved, I mean, I can look back now at the self then, and I could have said, if I had understood at the time that I was super curious, super hardworking, and, globally minded or whatever, whatever it would, so I spoke a bunch of languages, that might have been enough to transmit to people about myself to help me get into conversations that would lead to the right jobs. And I do think that the most interesting jobs come out of conversations and curiosity. They always have for me.